Hello and welcome to UNHCR session on fraud and corruption. Let's begin by talking about what fraud is. What is fraud? Fraud is the act of not telling the truth to make someone else believe something to get something in return for yourself or for somebody else. Fraud is also not telling the full truth about your identity or hiding the full truth. An example of fraud can involve a person who has taken someone else's identity and hides this information from UNHCR, or using an identity document that does not belong to them but actually belongs to somebody else. What is corruption? Corruption happens when people in positions of power, for example, UNHCR staff, a community leader, or a UNHCR partner, behaves in a dishonest way for personal gain. Let's look at what an exploitation scheme is. An exploitation scheme is when someone falsely claims to have special links with UNHCR and promises benefits such as registration, UNHCR documentation, or even resettlement to a third country in exchange for something valuable, which is usually money. A resettlement scheme can often be where somebody claims that refugees may pay 2,000 ringgit for resettlement to another country or more. How do we fight against fraud and corruption? UNHCR has a zero-tolerance policy to all types of fraud and corruption, including by its own staff and partners. All UNHCR services are free. There is no payment needed for any service or faster service from UNHCR. Paying or receiving money for a particular service from UNHCR is wrong. Let's look at what the Risk, Integrity and Oversight Team, or RIOT, in UNHCR does. The team has primarily two main objectives. The first is in fraud case management. The team conducts fraud investigations against refugees and asylum seekers where there are fraud allegations made against them. The team also monitors various fraudulent activities, for instance, exploitation schemes, and puts out targeted messaging to refugee communities to warn them about such schemes. The team works hard on providing education and communication around fraud and exploitation schemes to various stakeholders, including refugee communities, staff, our security guards and partners, even government counterparts. We promote anti-fraud messaging to all these stakeholders so that fraud can be reported to us in a timely manner. Now, you may ask, who can perpetrate fraud and corruption? Who could primarily be involved in fraud and corruption? Firstly, UNHCR staff or partners could be involved in fraud and corruption, and even refugees and asylum seekers could be involved in fraud and corruption, or even other individuals in Malaysia. How do you report UNHCR staff or partners who are involved in fraud and corruption? Please report all incidences of suspected fraud committed by UNHCR staff or partners to our Inspector General's office based in Geneva, Switzerland, for an independent investigation. The IGO will conduct a confidential investigation into all reports they receive, and they will also ensure that all reports that you share with them are confidential. You may find the links to how to contact the IGO through our online complaints form to the IGO shared here in the link, as well as the email to the IGO, which is inspector@unhcr.org. Reports on fraud and corruption are always kept confidential and will not be shared with anyone else without your permission. When reporting on fraud to the IGO, you have to include full details of what had happened. For instance, what happened, who was involved, when and where did the incidents take place, how it happened, and why do you believe the activity was improper. If you wish to report fraud and corruption committed by an asylum seeker or refugee, you may report it to RIOT in UNHCR Malaysia through RIOT's online complaints form at www.refugeemalaysia.org/contact, or the email directly to the RIOT mailbox, which is mlslufrd@unhcr.org. You may also find more information about how to report on fraud and corruption committed by an asylum-seeker or refugee through our online complaints form, available at the link below. If you're unsure if you have been contacted by UNHCR or somebody else, always check with UNHCR. Remember, reporting on fraud and corruption will not delay or affect your case in any way. All information that you send to RIOT and the IGO, including your identity, will not be shared with anyone else without your permission. You can find out more information on fraud and corruption through our Refugee Malaysia website through the link displayed on your screen, or by scanning the QR code as well. There are various posters available on the Refugee Malaysia website related to fraud and corruption. The first is that you need to remember that all UNHCR services are free, that you should say no to all forms of fraud and corruption, how you may protect yourself against fraud and corruption, especially under the circumstances of the pandemic, certain fraudulent schemes, scams, and misrepresentation of UNHCR that you should be aware of, as well as being aware of how to donate to UNHCR so that you do not fall victim to a scam. Several points to ponder. What examples of fraud and corruption or exploitation schemes have you observed in your daily work? Based on what you learned today, what can you do in future if you hear of cases like this? Let's read the first case scenario. Ahmad has heard through his friends that a UNHCR staff can assist in expediting registration in exchange for 1,000 ringgit. He comes to you for advice. What can you tell him? You should firstly tell him that UNHCR has a zero tolerance policy to all types of fraud and corruption, including by its own staff and partners. You should tell him that all UNHCR services are free, that there should be no payment for any service or even faster service from UNHCR. If you have information about fraud and corruption committed by UNHCR staff or UNHCR partner agencies, please report it to the Inspector General's Office, IGO, based in Geneva, Switzerland, for an independent investigation. This can be done via the online IGO complaint form or by email to the Inspector General's Office at inspector@unhcr.org. Remember, the IGO keeps all reports strictly confidential. Now let's look at the second case scenario. You receive a WhatsApp message saying that your UNHCR resettlement case can be fast-tracked if you pay 300 ringgit into a bank account number. What do? Remember that all UNHCR services are free. There is no payment for any service or faster service from UNHCR. If you receive such requests for payment for a UNHCR process, you can report the matter to the police, providing the bank account details of the scammer, report to RIOT using the online complaints form and or the MLSLU-FRD mailbox, providing your name and phone number and screenshots of the message you received, and what you did in response to the message, for instance, if you made a police report or otherwise. Remember that RIOT will keep all reports strictly confidential. If the person who sent you the message is another refugee, UNHCR will request your consent to put the information you provided to us to that refugee. If you do not consent, we will not share the information further. Finally, I would like to share with you a series of anti-fraud videos UNHCR has recently released for your reference. The first is scammers sending voice notes via mobile apps. Secondly, scammers chatting via mobile apps. Scammers setting up fraudulent UNHCR websites or apps. Community leaders claiming to have special ties with UNHCR. And scammers impersonating UNHCR staff. Please have a look at all 5 videos and share it widely with your contacts. Thank you for your attention.